guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're continuing the series on portfolios, and let's get down to the nitty gritty. And I'm going to be real for a second. Let's say you have good shots and you don't know what to do, but somewhere between the hard drive that is full of your photos and the portfolio you're actually showing people, somewhere information is getting lost. And I'm willing to bet I exactly know what the problem is. It's not your photography and it's not your editing. It's your editing portfolio. The brutal, uncomfortable process of deciding what stays, what goes, and what is in order for everything in this portfolio to live. And unfortunately, I hate to be the person to say it, but most photographers are terrible at this. And it's not their fault. It's that nobody has walked you through this step-by-step process. I'm in the process of getting my BFA in photography with a minor in videography, where I'll eventually pursue my master's. But today I'm going to do exactly that. I'm pulling from the methodology laid out by Selena Maitreya, formerly known as Selena Oppenheim, in her book Portfolios That Sell. Now, this is a four-step process that professional photographers are actually using. And by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for turning a folder of images within your, that's on your hard drive into a portfolio that is tight and cohesive and, impossible for people to ignore. So let's get into it. So the first thing you want to do is you want to build a métique. If you've never heard of it, it basically means a physical or visual prototype of your complete portfolio. And here's how it works. In my case, what I did, there's two methods, and I did the first method. You're going to print all of your candidate images, every shot, even considering those that you want to include, that you don't know if you want to include, and you're going to lay them out somewhere. You can see all of them all at the exact same time. So in my case, I'm going to be hanging them up on the wall. You can use a floor, a table, but you want a place where you can see all of them at once for multiple times. Now, why does this matter? Well, because our brains process images completely different when we see them isolated, like we see on the screen, versus having all of them in a contact sheet, right? So now that we can see them all together, right, we can have a different opinion and view of all of the photos because we're in a contact sheet. After you have everything put together, an image that looks stunning on your screen, if it's by itself, right, it might completely crash with everything around it within the sequence. And this is sequencing of the photos, right? 1, 2, 1, 4, 4, 1, 7, 9. Granted, they're not in order, and this is not how I wanted them to be laid out, and that's why the numbers are there. This is just more to show you what a contact sheet looks like. Now, Oppenheim herself describes this moment basically as beautiful. She calls it one of the most favorite stages of building a portfolio when it comes to developing it. All of the months and efforts laid out right here. All of the photos in different time of the year. You have winter, summer, early spring, early winter, midwinter, fall. These are all different type of times of years that we're shooting to create this. And this is where you actually get to see what you've actually made. And I think it's an amazing point. Now, a practical note on scale. This is very important. You don't need to go out and get giant expensive prints for this. If you're shooting digitally, print small contact sheets, within Adobe Lightroom. It's actually, a simple process. I prefer Capture One, but in Adobe Lightroom, you're going to select all of your images within, the library module. You're going to go to the print module, choose single image / contact sheet under layout style, select a 4x5 contact sheet template, and then you're going to print that. And you can then come apart with scissors and spread them all apart. If you don't want to do a contact sheet and spread them apart and cut them, you could always just print 4x5 at Walgreens. I ended up printing 20 photos roughly, and I think it was like $4 because you can find coupon codes for Walgreens. Now, I'm not endorsed by them in any way, shape, or form. I'm just explaining my process. The second way, street photographer Joel Meyerowitz used the exact process to prepare for his 2006 retroactive at the Glacier National Gidou de Pouam. I'm sorry, I'm not French, and I know I butchered that, but it's in Paris. And if it's good enough for one of the most respected street photographers alive, it's worth trying, right? You know, photographer Steve Simon, now he takes a completely different approach to this. He doesn't like to print. He uses Apple Aperture, which unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that process is gone. I'm pretty sure Apple got rid of it, but it was a software to build digital matiques, which lets you rearrange the sequence and save different versions of it and experiment without committing to anything. And he puts it perfectly. The ability to try different layouts and save as many as you want without committing to one is a huge game changer. And that's the same way with this, right? The order of rhythm of your portfolio will evolve over time, and digital matiques give you that freedom. Both approaches work, but the point is the same. Get everything visible at once so you can make an informed decision instead of just guessing. Because if you're guessing, then you're probably doing something wrong. Okay, your images are spread out, right? We have them cut out. We have, our contact sheet right here, and they're all spread out. Now comes the part that makes most photographers uncomfortable. Step 2 is what Oppenheim calls playing the client, okay? You stop being the person who made these images and you become the person who is evaluating them. You become the art director. You become the gallery owner. And you become the photo editor. And you become the potential buyer, the client, right? And you have to ask yourself these specific questions when you're evaluating all of your photos, okay? Now, I'm saying specific for a very important reason. If you say, oh, I like this photo, it's a good photo. Okay, you're right. Now, let's dive into specific questions. Does this photo have a well-defined vision? Well, maybe, I don't know. Okay, so then we don't have a defined vision. Is the vision communicated in different ways throughout the portfolio? Right? These are questions that are very specific. Are these images consistently strong? Do we have consistent flow? And what type of assignment would I hire this photographer to shoot? Let me ask you these again, okay? 1, does this photographer have a well-defined vision? Is the vision communicated differently throughout the portfolio? Are these images consistently strong? And the type of assignment, what type of an assignment would I give this photographer to shoot based off this portfolio, right? John Paul, a fine art photographer and educator, suggests sorting your images into 3 categories, okay? And I totally agree with them, and this is what I did. All right, let me put my stuff back in a contact sheet real fast. Perfect. So he talks about keepers, sleepers, and fizzles. Okay, your keepers are your absolutely strong images. So like 14, right? That one that stops you cold, this is a non-negotiable. But what do we have? Right? We have a little bit of human presence right here. Do any of these other photos have any human presence? No. Or at least I don't see any. So that's something to consider, right? That's something that you're looking at. Yes, you have the barn here. Okay, so we could say two photos, but that's not enough. So that tells me either A, I need to reshoot 14, or I need to add more human element. Okay? Sleepers are interesting images that don't grab you immediately but reveal more depth the longer you look at it. So let me close out my contact sheet. A good example of a sleeper will be the Maroon Bells, which is right there. Right? This is a sleeper image. It's a good image. It's an interesting image that doesn't grab you immediately, but it reveals more depth the more we look at it. And I'm not going to dismiss this one too fast, because it is a good image. It is beautiful, but because it is a sleeper, I need to reshoot it. Now, fizzles are images that clearly do not belong. They're the ones that, when you're honest with yourself, you already know that aren't making the cut. So in my case, panos. All of my panos are getting ripped out. I really love this pano. It's a beautiful shot up above Independent Paths. And I mean, I love it. I mean, the lake is nice and smooth. You have beautiful reflection. You have nice foreground, nice middle ground, and it's just well cohesive. But here's the reason why I'm not doing panos, and this is why it's a fizzle. When we're making our portfolios, right, you're going to use 11 by 17, 11 by 14, whatever. So in my case, I'm looking at 11 by 14 or 11 by 17. I haven't decided yet. If I do 11 by 14, when you open the book, because you're in landscape mode, it goes from 1114 to 11 by 28. If I do 11 by 17, you open the book, it now becomes 11 by 34. With panos, I have two options. Option one is when you open the book, you have the crease, right? You have the crease in the book. That crease is going to create a line down the middle right here because of where the paper goes. So that's option one. I can go all the way from the left, all the way to the right. Option two is I keep it at 11 by 34, but then on the right side, I have the page open. So not only do you have 11 by 34, but then you have a page that's folded in on itself that you can then open. So add another 17 inches to the 34, and that's how big the book is because the paper's folded in half that then folds into the book, right? And I don't want to do that yet because I'm going to do a separate book later down the road where that's all it is panoramas, okay? And so this is going to be a fizzle. Now, the keepers are easy to identify. The hard part is, and this is where most people kind of stall out, is separating the sleepers from the fizzles, okay? Because both categories feel very uncertain, and both feel like, well, maybes, and if you have a maybe is uncomfortable because we don't like being uncomfortable. So there's a target that you're trying to aim for. In my case, right, when I create my portfolio, I need to have at least a minimum of 20 photos. I'm actually going to shoot between 20 to 25 photos because I think there's room for growth, okay? Now, you don't need 40, you don't need 30. You just want to make sure you have a tightly edited photo that's deeply cohesive. A portfolio that size done right will be 10 times more memorable than a bloated collection of 15 okay shots. So photography critic A.D. Coleman, he once joked that photography attracts artists who are incapable of editing their own work. And honestly, he's not wrong. Back in 1995, photography critic A.D. Coleman once joked that photography artists who are incapable of editing their own work. And honestly, I mean, he's not wrong. Back in 1995, essay from Lenswork magazine, Coleman writes about something he calls redirection, which just means the process of putting work into its final presentable shape. And he even says something, I think, about consistently, redirection is what transforms a quantity of images of a heap to a whole. Okay? Redirection is what transforms quantity of images from a heap to a whole, right? A heap to a whole, that is different. The difference between a hard drive full of photos and a portfolio. Editing is the thing that creates meaning within volume. He also quotes photographer Lonnie Shelvison. Photography is about editing. If you don't edit your work, you're not a photographer. Now, here's the part I really want you to hear. You don't have to do this alone. You don't. There's a whole network out there that allows you to connect with other people. Steve Simon talks about this directly. He says you often are too close to the images you've made to see them clearly. You need someone who can articulate ideas, criticism, and suggestion, in ways that actually understand and use them. Put it together, have your friends look at it and get their input. Have your mom look at it. Anybody who stops by, have them look at it and get an outside opinion. One car battery is strong. 400 car batteries hooked up together is even stronger. So go get help. A former instructor, a trusted classmate, someone who will be honest with you. Not kind, not gentle. Let me say that again. Not kind or gentle, but honest. Eventually, that role will be played by agents and curators or gallery owners. But for now, use the people you have access to, okay? And when you start cutting, be brave, because here's something that will probably happen that feels strange at the first. The first image you cut will often be your earliest ones. The ones that mean the most to you at the beginning of your project, the ones that give you the courage to keep going and moving forward and have that motivation, right? Writer Annie Dillard captures this feeling better than anyone in her book, The Writing Life. She describes how the parts you must cut is often original key passages, the very thing that resets what we're hanging on to, the thing that you're standing for. And she's right. And, it still hurts every single time. It is going to hurt. I remember, when I had to do this and I started cutting up my photos, I didn't like it, but now I'm comfortable with it and we're making leaps and bounds. Here's the thing that's very important. What is it costing you to make it, right? $3, $4 to print it at Walgreens. Now, how long did it take? Not much, not much of a particular image that means to you during this process. The viewer, he doesn't know any of that. He doesn't, they don't need to. What they see is what is in front of them, and making sure that everything in front of them is in the right place and earns its place, right? You don't just want to throw a collection together just to look. You want them to be there. They've earned the right to be there because they're beautiful photos and they're connecting with your why within your portfolio. Okay, so I have my photos and you want to lay everything out. You've played the client, you've made the cuts, now comes the part that ties everything together. And this is step 4 in the sequence, okay? And this is where your portfolio transforms from a collection of strong images into something that actually moves and motivates people. The principle is simple, but the execution takes real thought. Your best images leads, it's going to go first. So in my case, right, these are all of my photos. My first image is not going to be this. My first image is going to be this. It's a very strong opener. It's an amazing photo, and I know that this is going to do very, very well. Your second image is going to be your best image, but close. Okay? So in my case, this is my opening image. My last image might be this or might be this. It depends on what type of sequencing I'm trying to do. Okay? It's going to go last because it's the final thing someone sees before they close the book and they click away and it makes it land, right? Strong beginning, strong end. Everything in between is where the craft of sequencing lives. And you have to use several tools to create that flow. Chronology, putting it in chronologically, telling a story through time, light, right? Moving from dark to bright or bright to dark, or contrast, starting from high contrast to low contrast, right? These are different ways we can put our book in chronological. Color, using a palette, right, as a thread that connects images visually based on color. So I could use color in my case, right? Genre, a group by type or internationally bleeding types to create contrast. Spiritual construction, right? Thinking about how images face each other, how the eye moves from one frame to the next, where you're pushing together or breathing apart, right? But the point is sequencing is not just random. You're not just, oh well, I want this here, I want this here. It's not random. It's some sort of order. Every transition between images should feel intentional, like a sentence leading on to natural or into the next paragraph. Photographer Mary Ellen Mark, one of the most celebrated documentary photographers of the 20th century, uses physical metiques to sequence her book, Ward 81. It literally is taping prints onto pages and testing, how do they look next to each other. There's levels of intentionality that we're talking about, right? So what I'm going to do is lay out all my photos. Once I have all my photos laid out, I'm going to put them in order. Once I put them in order, I'm going to go out and get 11 by 17 paper, and then I'm going to go through that to see what it looks like on the left and the right and the whole flow. So let's bring this all the way back home, okay? We talked about the 4 steps and how they work together as one continuous process. The Matique lets you see everything at once. Playing the client forces honest evaluation. The cut transforms the heap into a whole. And sequencing gives your whole portfolio a heartbeat, a beginning, a middle, and an end. None of this is comfortable. Editing yourself is one of the hardest skills and creative persons will ever have to deal with when it comes to development, but it's a skill. A.D. Coleman calls it a hallmark of the artistic maturity, and he's right. If you want to leave, I want to leave you with something that John talks about. A puzzler winning photojournalist and educator says to his students, and it stuck with me ever since I've read it, okay? And he says, which picture in your current portfolio are least strong, and replace them as you take better ones. Just do your best. That's all you can ask of yourself. Don't believe for a moment that you are deserving of less than exceptional, or that you can't obtain it. And that's it. That's the whole thing. You don't need a perfect portfolio right now. You need a better portfolio that you had. You want a better portfolio than what you had yesterday, okay? And the process we walk through today is how you get there. So go lay out your images, go play the client, make those cuts, find a sequence, and let's see what you got. And if you would love for me to look at your contact sheets or your sequence to give you feedback, please put it in the comments, put a link, put a tag, something, and I would love to come look at it and we can go from there. So I'll see you in the next video.